We are going to kind of dive into to each region. We'll recap it and then, maybe make amends on who we have winning it all. And we're going to start in the East. This was obviously kind of the crazy bracket with the number one seed in the East, the Purdue Boilermakers. They go down to 16 seed Fairleigh Dickinson. Only the second number 16 seed ever to take down a one seed, joining UMBC from a few years ago. We obviously also saw Michigan State, the 7 seed, take down USC and Marquette. Looking ahead, we have number 4 Tennessee versus number 9 Florida Atlantic, and on the other side, it's number 3 Kansas State versus number 7 Michigan State. We'll start with you, Raider Jim. What were your thoughts? The recap of the East Regional and who you think's going to take it.
Yeah, overall, if I may, for March Madness, we've got two number one seeds left, and that is Houston and Alabama. Purdue made history the wrong way by being taken out by Fairleigh Dickinson. And in the West, Kansas, they got past their 16 seed. Howard, and then what happened? They went down. And we can elaborate more on that when we get to the West Division. But wow, none of this surprises me. It was like one of those sucker punch situations. It seemed like I couldn't believe it when I saw Purdue, of all people, went down, and Zach Edey. That was it for him. And unfortunately, that's probably how he's going to be remembered in a lot of bar trivia. Hey, who was that big guy that played for Purdue and didn't get out of round one, like he was all by himself? The others in also in East Regional, we have the number 2 seed, Marquette. Shaka and his boys got taken out. Duke, who was coming around, they got taken out. And Kentucky. So you have the 1, the 2, the 5, and the 6. Wow, what a wild region it was down there. So what are we left with? We're left with number 9, Florida Atlantic, taking on Tennessee. Now, let me tell you, Florida Atlantic is 9-1 over their last 10 games. I'm not going to call it an upset if they beat Tennessee. These kids are playing some good ball right now, but so is Tennessee. Real slow, not real slow, but I mean, very just consistently under the radar almost, but they're playing well. But who would have thought, after a mediocre season and so many head-scratching weeks during pre-conference and conference play, we'd be sitting here talking about Tom Izzo has his boys fired up, playing the best basketball of the season, and wow, they're playing well. But they're going to take on a really hot Kansas State team, who's a 3 seed right now, playing very, very strong. So I'm going to give the nod to Kansas State in that one. But I will not be surprised if it's Kansas State playing Florida Atlantic in that Elite Eight game.
Yeah, it's a very interesting breakdown, obviously, when you lose the number 1 seed to a 16. And I also think there were a lot of people who had Memphis to not only beat Florida Atlantic, but a lot of people had them to beat Purdue as well. There are a lot of people who weren't sold on Purdue, myself included. However, I did expect them to at least get by FDU. But Florida Atlantic kind of spoiled all of that. Good for them going forward. A historic year for that program, and it continues. Coach, what are your thoughts on the East Regional?
Yeah, kind of concluding, kind of like what you both said about it. There's just, we talked all season long about the parity in college basketball. Ones going down, ones and twos and threes, exchanging spots throughout the year. We talked about the parity. What I'm hearing on the national broadcast is how many older teams there are in this tournament. And we've spoken about that as well. I did have Purdue winning the first round game, but I did pick FAU to beat Memphis and to beat Purdue. So, that's one of my picks that is making that look good. I thought Duke was going to handle Tennessee, but obviously Tennessee, the strength of Tennessee, the length of Tennessee, the maturity of Tennessee just kind of took. And remember, Duke's a young team. I think John Shire has a lot of searching ahead of him if he's going to stick with the same game plan as Coach K did, or he's reliant on some of these high freshman prospects to do their work. into a bracket. Well, it hasn't worked much, even when Coach K was at the helm. I think as college basketball looks, and as all these teams and schools have been given that COVID year for, I believe there's going to be 1 or 2 more years of that COVID exemption for a couple of kids that were, I think, the freshmen, possibly the redshirt freshmen of those seasons that will be allowed. So it's still going to be an older basketball season in the next couple of years. Um, yeah, I was kind of, I alluded to Providence last week, and I was wondering if Ed Cooley rumors were going to be an issue, and they absolutely were. Today, I guess Ed Cooley was named Georgetown's head coach. So a lot of transactions or transitions from the end of the Big East tournament into the big dance and then gone. So Kansas State, I had winning first round and didn't expect them to get past Purdue in the next, but Kansas State, they're making a nice run. They're an older team. They were a team that we all spoke highly about when they were beating Kansas. They made a nice run in the Big 12. They're through onto the Sweet 16. And then, I don't think any of us really touched on what Coach Izzo did all season long. They were kind of floundering in the Big Ten, not knowing what to expect from them. Didn't really have a good Big Ten tournament. All of a sudden, they get USC, get them, and then they beat Vermont, to get to the Sweet 16. So, or they beat Marquette, sorry, to get to the Sweet 16. So, you know, they don't call this March Madness for nothing. And I think everyone across the nation experienced that again. So,
Yeah, I feel kind of like Tom Izzo and his Spartans are, Jason in in his iteration. Every time you think they're dead, they come from out of nowhere.
yeah,
Obviously, I thought USC was going to at least perform better than they did. And then on the other hand, Marquette, I thought they would handily take care of Michigan State. That wasn't the case, and
nope,
Izzo has
yeah,
his boys ready to roll. It's that time of year. Myself, I picked Kansas State to win this region, so I'm not going to change anything there, but I will say Tennessee is very impressive to me. I was like you, coach. I thought Duke was going to take care of business, especially after what we saw in the ACC tournament. Really good showing by the SEC. Give credit where credit is due. They
mhm,
have three teams in the Sweet 16, tied with the Big East, which ironically, I don't think we would have been terribly surprised if we said, hey, three Big East teams have made the Sweet 16, but the three that did from the Big East, obviously that's a surprise. And then the Big Ten, Michigan State does what they need to, but every other Big Ten team has bowed out, which is, I think, a big surprise there. But I'm going to stick
I
with Kansas State.
Yeah, back to your Big East comment, I think they kind of lost a little bit of luster toward the end of the season because these guys were all beating each other up. And then we kind of forgot about Xavier when Manji went down, and it took some time for him to get going again. And then the timing couldn't have been better these first two games of the tournament.
Yeah, it was interesting to see it.
Yep.
Even UConn went
Yeah.
through. I mean, they were number 2 or 3 in the country early on, and
Mhm.
I don't want to say they were a bubble team, but they, to be number 2 or 3 in the country about midway through the season and you're a 4 seed, that's a bit of a drop for them. They find themselves in in the Sweet 16. I will say one really cool story about Kansas State kind of got overlooked was Keontae Johnson, a kid who a few years ago actually his career and we thought possibly his life was going to come to an end on the court. He collapsed. He was in a coma for a few days. He has come back and taken advantage of kind of those obviously redshirt situations and the COVID year. He's at Kansas State, 17 and a half points. Congratulations to him to get back on the court and also be in this situation for Kansas State going forward, a big win over Kentucky.